Doom Endgame was terrible. Everything was needlessly complicated, and it felt like the authors tried to shoehorn another trilogy of story into just one book. Plot lines from the first three just get abandoned in favor of creating another alien species and cramming in a bunch of nonsense. Some of my problems from the third book are fixed, but overall, it's just really stupid. We only have one narrator, and unfortunately that narrator is going to be Flynn, and he is a fucking idiot. By the time I was finished reading this book, I had no idea what the point of the story was. It felt like I was reading a knockoff of The Forever War by Joe Haldeman, and it kind of felt like the authors had read that book, didn't understand it, and then decided to rip off the parts that they could understand, like time travel when you're moving through space at faster than light speed. They completely ignored a lot of the psychological effects of it, and they just really made a stupid story that did not need to exist. So remember when this story was about fighting demons, like an alien race that had genetically engineered a bunch of demonic creatures and everything? Well, that storyline gets wrapped up in the first few chapters because all of those aliens are dead. Even though a big battle is built up over the first 4 or 5 chapters, our heroes land on the evil alien planet, which is called Fred World because our authors can't think of a good name for the aliens, so they call them Freds. And all of the aliens that started this whole mess have been wiped out by another alien species that evolves much faster than humans and the other aliens. And because our authors can't think of a good name for the aliens, they call them newbies. Why not? So the newbies have wiped out all of the Freds, and for some reason, Flynn and Arlene decide, well, we need to go kill the newbies. And then they go off to try to kill the newbies. For no goddamn reason. It's just, I don't understand why they did a lot of this stuff. Also, I do want to point out that magically, our heroes have all of their guns and ammunition and everything. Just an unlimited supply of ammunition and guns, which they shouldn't have because they didn't have them when they attacked the Fred base. They were using the lasers that the Clave gave them. But now when they're on the Fred ship, they've magically got shotguns, rifles, and pistols, and their own Kevlar armor. Even though at the end of the third book, when they teleported onto the Fred ship, all of that stuff was lost. So they shouldn't have any of it. They didn't even bring it with them when they attacked the Fred base. I feel like I was the only one that read these books in order, and even the authors didn't do that. Oh, God. But yeah, just Flynn decides they need to go kill the newbies. He gives us an explanation, but it's really just nonsensical, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It goes back to Flynn's first response to everything to be violence. That's really what he does. You would have thought, okay, no, the evil aliens are dead, they can go back home. Nope. Flynn's got to get some killing done. And because Arlene's too stupid to say anything, she goes with him. Because fuck Earth at this point. I mean, 200 years have passed, so everyone they know is dead, and they don't know how the newbies have evolved in that amount of time, and they don't know how the human race has changed. And all the interesting characters are dead at this point. So, remember when Ken told us about the cryptic plans for the human race, and Jill was abandoned in LA and was fighting off the alien collaborators, and Albert was left at the alien base because he had an accident? I wish the authors had been writing about those stories, and I'll talk more about that later. But instead, we get... oh gosh, so they leave the Fred planet, and they go to this other place called Skinwalker, which the name of the planet doesn't matter. None of the names matter in this. And they find a bunch of kind of new humans. And they try to show how humanity has advanced by having these newer humans kind of speak like a broken English. and it's terrible. It's a pain in the ass to read and try to figure out what the hell the humans are talking about, and then read about how Flynn and Arlene are trying to figure out what the humans are talking about. If you're just going to have them speak English, just have them speak English. Don't make it broken and dumb, because then you're just making everybody look stupid. And it's just, they already do that with the Clave aliens who are still here. They're still here, and they're still goddamn worthless. So, yeah. They find the new humans. By this point, 300 years have passed. So, we're now 300 years in the future. And the newbies have apparently evolved into a virus and taken over the humans, which Flynn just decides happened. I don't know how. And then, to make things dumber, he decides that their weakness is religion, so he starts preaching to the new humans, and magically that works. Somehow. I don't understand how that would work. I don't understand why the new humans have magically lost faith in anything. None of that really gets explained, because Flynn needs to start shooting shit again. So that's what he does. And then they get stranded on the planet Skinwalker after they're apparently have their souls sucked out and shoved into a simulation, which we'll come back to at the end. Then they need to go to Earth because they need to stop these infested humans from getting to Earth and killing everybody, or infecting them and turning them into other people that Flynn can't handle, because it all has to be about Flynn. Anyway, they go to Earth after they are in a simulation, which is horribly explained. And they find out that Earth has been completely abandoned. So the human race has just said, screw it, we're done with Earth, and they left. So why? And then it turns out that there's now a copy of Flynn and Arlene. One copy is in a simulation that is being run by the newbies. The other ones are, I guess, on Earth. And then we find out that Flynn is still way into underage girls because he finds a clone of Arlene. Or not Arlene. He finds a clone of Jill who's 15, and he's all excited about it. God, I hate this book. And then it just sort of stops. They decide, okay, well, one copy of us is in this simulation, and that's great. They can just stay in that simulation. And they're happy about it. And then the book ends. And I can go on with my life, and I can read something that isn't awful. God, I hated this book. That's the story. If you're confused by my explanation about it, just imagine how confused I was when I was reading this goddamn piece of shit that took 2 authors to write. So yeah, everybody that I actually cared about in this book is long dead. Anyone that had a somewhat interesting story to tell, they're gone. So Jill is still lost somewhere in LA. You never find out how the humans kicked the demon aliens off of the planet. You just know that they did. And they had done it shortly, within 30 years after Flynn and Arlene went off to go do something. You never find out what impact that, everything Flynn and Arlene are doing has had on the actual war effort. You never find out how Albert got back to Earth. You never find out anything else about Ken and the whole fact that he had kind of uncovered this whole conspiracy thing and whatnot. And yeah, it was just really stupid. We're following these 2 characters who I've grown to hate over the course of 4 books. And all the other characters who had interesting stories to tell are either abandoned back on Earth or are just killed off because the authors apparently don't know how to finish up their stories in any meaningful way. So Hidalgo dies just unceremoniously, just He gets introduced, has a really interesting character arc and everything, and then he dies off because apparently the authors, they have no idea what to do with him. I don't know. I guess they could say his character arc was finished, but I mean, at least it started and kind of at an end point. Flynn and Arlene's character arcs never get going. At least Flynn's never gets going. He's still the same awful person throughout all of this, who spends most of the book whining about, his own personal moral code and why nobody else cares about it, or nobody else adheres to his own moral code. It's frustrating to read about him. He never makes any sense when he's trying to explain stuff. And he's got creepy moments where he's staring at naked 14 and 15-year-old girls. It's weird. And I don't understand it. He's just a shit character, and I was really glad when this was all over. But yeah, this book left me with so many questions, and there are just things that I'm never going to get answers for. Let's talk about a few of those questions. So I mentioned the Forever War a while ago at the beginning of all of this. And if you haven't read that, it's a much better book about time travel and fighting and soldiers kind of having to deal with how society has changed after they've gone to war and come back. And that feels like a story that these authors read, or one of them read. And it felt like they didn't understand it. Because it's never really talked about. Like, Flynn doesn't have any psychological problems with this. Arlene kind of does, but Flynn magics those away by stepping in front of her while she's really stupidly shooting a shotgun at a steel wall for some odd reason. Or she's shooting her rifle at a steel wall for some odd reason at the very beginning. Because Arlene's actually suffering from like the psychological effects of realizing that she's not going to be able to see anybody that she loves anymore. Flynn apparently has no personal contacts whatsoever. He mentions his fiancée, which I had no idea he even had one until it was brought up randomly. And he apparently doesn't care about her at all, because I don't know what her name was, and he doesn't mention her name in this. So yeah, apparently that marriage was never going to work out to begin with, so going into space and jumping 480 years into the future was probably the best thing for both of them. Assuming that she was still alive anyway. So, yeah, I was really wondering, like, what psychological effect these time traveling was actually having on these people. And that's not really addressed in any way. At some point, the Claves, so Sears and Roebuck, the two binary aliens that are a hive mind with each other, they just learn how to talk to one person and not talk to two. I don't know how that worked, but okay. We don't know anything about where the newbies really came from. We don't know how they were able to defeat the evil aliens so fast. We don't know really what the motivation for the newbies is, aside from the fact that they think they need to fix humanity for some weird reason. We don't know anything about the Earth that Flynn and Arlene left, because those aren't important to the authors. What is important to them is jamming religion into this for some weird reason. How did Earth actually lose faith in all religions? Why do the authors seem to think that the only religion that could help them is Christianity? I don't get that. None of it really makes a whole lot of sense. And you're left with all this stuff to wonder about, and the authors are kind of just hoping you don't think about any of that. And I could see somebody who wasn't thinking about it would probably, actually enjoy this book a little bit more. But I was left with wondering, what happened with Jill? What happened with Ken? What happened with Albert? We get explanations of what happened to them, but we don't really get the why any of this actually took place. Like, what was the point of all of this? That's never really explained. Like, how did this war actually start? Why are these two sides fighting each other? And I'm talking about, like, the galactic part of this. The authors try to ham-handedly explain it as two different literary thoughts, like two different schools of literary thought, and they apparently don't understand those enough to really articulate them, or they're just showing off how conveniently incompetent and conveniently stupid both Flynn and Arlene are, where they can't really articulate it. And oftentimes when they're trying to explain it to Flynn, he just says, yeah, whatever, they're talking, and I wandered off. Which just kind of, yeah, Flynn's the worst fucking person in this entire book, and I was hoping to God he died during this whole thing. I don't know. I really don't understand so much about this. I don't know why there was a simulation at the end. I don't know how the newbies managed to, I guess, clone Flynn and Arlene or take their soul out, or if they could do that. Like, what, why, how, and when? None of this stuff really gets addressed, because it really feels like the authors just wanted to jam a religious message into this, but the religious message is so stupid that it doesn't make any sense. I also don't understand how none of these people have figured out how to fly a ship. Like, that's the last big question I had. They need to fly a ship from Skinwalker back to Earth, and they realize they don't have a pilot. But they still have Sears and Roebuck, who have shown that they can learn how to fly new ships. Like, they can fly the alien ship, the Fred aliens. But apparently they can't figure out human technology, which just, I don't know. This whole book was just really, really dumb, and I don't have any idea why it exists. Okay, so let's just wrap this one up quickly, because I feel like I've taken way too much time on this book. If you can't tell, or if you need to be reminded, I did not like this book at all. I thought it was needlessly complicated. It was just incredibly stupid. None of the characters felt like they were real people. They just randomly get dumb over the course of this, and then will occasionally be smart. Everyone just kind of sucked in this, and all of the good parts of the story happen to someone else and are vaguely mentioned in this book. I don't know why they ever went to space. Like, that seemed to be just completely pointless. You never find out what impact Flynn and Arlene's actions have had on the war that was going on Earth. That was where the story should have stayed, was with the war on Earth, with them kicking the demon aliens off of Earth. That was where everything should have just stayed put. Talk about that story. If you want to bring in a third-party alien, have them be ambassadors to Earth to help the Earthlings. Don't have them go off on this really stupid and terrible excuse for a ripoff of the Forever War. Because that's a good book, and the one that you're writing is garbage. So, yeah, I'll wrap this up. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've read this book or any of the Doom books, please let me know, and let me know what your thoughts are. I will talk to you all later. Bye.